For those of you not familiar with the First Nations Gazette, allow me to provide you with some background as to its creation. In the 1980s, Canada exempted First Nation bylaws and notices from the publication in the Canada Gazette. The effect of the exemption from publication under the Statutory Instruments Act was to place the burden of providing notice and publication of bylaws with the First Nations. The public exemption did not alter the fact that First Nations bylaws could be struck down for lack of due process in notification, passage, or publication. In response, as chairman of the Indian Taxation Advisory Board, the predecessor to the Commission, I led the development of the First Nations Gazette with the help of the Native Law Centre at the University of Saskatchewan. The First Nations Gazette was officially launched on Aboriginal Day 1997. To assist First Nations in providing notice of their laws, it is published by the First Nations Tax Commission and the Native Law Centre. Today, more than 180 First Nations from every region of Canada use the First Nations Gazette. More than 3,000 bylaws, laws, and land and governance codes and public notices are published. Like the Canada Gazette, the First Nations Gazette is committed to maintaining the highest professional standards for legal publication. As a single and authoritative point of reference for First Nations lawmaking and notice, the First Nations Gazette safeguards the First Nations lawmaking jurisdiction and promotes transparency and accountability. Through its searchable inventory, the Gazette provides direct access to the laws that may affect First Nations citizens, leasehold and other residents living on reserves, electors, legal practitioners, and those with an interest in reserve lands. And like the Canada Gazette, the First Nations Gazette is now exclusively an electronic publication. The Gazette can be found at www.fng.ca. There is no cost to access or use the notification services of the First Nations Gazette. I am certain that someday all First Nations laws will be housed at the First Nations Gazette, and I would encourage Parliament, and in particular the senators, to help us in this regard. Finally, this bill requires the Minister of Aboriginal Affairs to report annually on the progress made to develop new legislation to replace the Indian Act. This is a key element to this bill and one that the Commission strongly supports. In closing, let me state I am pleased with the changes proposed in Bill C-428. While I am among those who would like to see the Indian Act gone, I also understand that you cannot eat an elephant whole. This will take time, and an alternative will be needed. As the Prime Minister described the Indian Act, the tree has deep roots. Blowing up the stump would just leave a big hole. In my view, we cannot afford to wait. Incremental change or working around the Indian Act, just as we did in 2005 with the passage of First Nations Fiscal and Management Act, is the only way to proceed at the present time. In that regard, Bill C-428 represents a positive step forward. Thank you.